Every hunter in this country has a blue and yellow can sitting in his garage right now, and every time he reaches for it before opening day, he is pouring a $2 chemical solvent designed for Cold War missile tubes, not firearms, straight into his firing pin channel. What the industry buried is that the $12 tactical oils lining the shelves at every sporting goods store contain nearly the same base mineral oil as a $2 bottle of sewing machine oil from your grandmother's sewing room. Your grandfather never sprayed rocket fuel on his deer rifle, and his bolt never failed him in the cold. I need to be honest with you. I fell for it too, for years. And today I'm going to show you exactly what WD-40 does to steel at the molecular level. Why a master gunsmith with 35 years on the bench calls it liquid sandpaper, and how a $2 fix the industry prayed you'd never find will keep your rifle cycling like wet glass for the rest of your life. Welcome back to HuntForge, the only channel where we strip away the marketing lies and forge real, hardcore hunting truth. Today, we are tearing down a myth that has infected the American hunting community for generations. We are going to expose how that innocent-looking can of WD-40 is quietly, systematically destroying your expensive firearms from the inside out. We are going to talk about the terrifying chemistry of what happens when you spray it on your bolt, how it acts as a magnet for catastrophic failure, and how the multi-billion-dollar hunting industry has been laughing all the way to the bank while you suffer. But I'm not just here to bring you bad news. I'm here to hand you the exact weapon to fight back. A $2 bottle hiding in plain sight. The same fix that a Virginia gunsmith and a retired Army staff sergeant both swore by, independently, decades apart. If you care about your gear, if you respect the animal enough to ensure a clean shot, and if you are tired of being ripped off by corporate hunting brands, sit down and turn the volume up. You are about to become a truth holder. Let's travel back in time. The year is 1953. The Cold War is escalating, and down in a small lab in San Diego, California, a company called Rocket Chemical is working on a government contract for the Atlas missile program. Condensation was forming on the stainless steel outer skins of the rocket components during storage, and they needed a chemical solvent that could push moisture out of metal surfaces fast. They tried 39 different chemical formulas. All of them failed. But the 40th formula worked. They called it water displacement 40th formula. WD-40 was born. Notice what I just said. Water displacement. Nowhere in that legendary 1953 laboratory notebook did it say high-pressure firearm lubricant. Nowhere did it say hunting oil. It said water displacement for aerospace metal storage. That's it. That's all it was ever designed to do. Now picture this. It is the late 1950s, and the military-industrial surplus market is booming. Hardware stores across America start stocking WD-40 for everything from squeaky hinges to rusty lawnmower bolts. Some clever hunter reaches for it one fall evening, sprays down his deer rifle, and tells his buddy it works great. His buddy tells his buddy, and within a generation, an aerospace water displacer becomes America's gun oil. Not because of any science, but because of a campfire rumor that nobody bothered to question. The industry watched this happen, and they smiled. Because a hunter running WD-40 is a hunter whose rifle will fail. And a hunter whose rifle fails buys a lot of expensive solvents trying to fix a problem that should never have existed. Now let's crack open the chemistry, because this is where the betrayal lives. The science is actually simple when you break down the chemical architecture.
WD-40 is primarily built around a mixture of aliphatic hydrocarbons. Think of it as a family of petroleum-based solvents and a highly refined light mineral oil.
Up to 75% of what is inside that can is made up of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, which act as a carrier solvent. When you hose down your rifle's action with WD-40, it feels incredibly slick at first. That is the solvent breaking down the surface grime. But here is the catastrophic catch. Those solvents are volatile. They're designed to evaporate into thin air within hours. When the solvent vanishes, what is left behind? A microscopic, sticky petroleum film of non-volatile mineral oil. In an aerospace hangar, protecting a rocket casing from condensation, that thin film prevents rust just fine. But inside the receiver of a hunting rifle, a machine that generates explosive heat, high friction, and extreme mechanical pressures, that film is a death sentence. Let's talk about what happens the moment you pull the trigger. A modern firearm operates with incredibly tight tolerances, often measured in hundredths of a millimeter. When you fire, the internal components are subjected to rapid thermal expansion, carbon fouling, lead residue, and copper particulates. We are talking about temperatures spiking above 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit inside the chamber for a fraction of a second, then plummeting back down. When this violent mixture of extreme heat and carbon dust meets the sticky, drying mineral oil left behind by WD-40, a chemical transformation occurs. The oil oxidizes and polymerizes. It thickens. The long hydrocarbon chains cross-link and harden. You are not lubricating your gun. You are applying a chemical glue. Over time, this residue layers upon itself and hardens into a waxy, gummy substance known in the gunsmithing world as varnish. This varnish is highly adhesive. It acts as a magnet for environmental dust, sand, dirt from the woods, and unburnt powder. Imagine pouring liquid sandpaper into your rifle's bolt carrier group. That is exactly what is happening at the microscopic level. This is where the real nightmare begins. As this sludge builds up on your slide rails or locking lugs, it severely increases the coefficient of friction, the resistance between two metal surfaces sliding against each other. Your action slows down. You start experiencing failures to feed and failures to eject. But the most vulnerable area of all? The firing pin channel. For your rifle to fire, the firing pin must travel forward with high velocity and zero resistance to strike the primer. Capillary action, the same force that pulls water up a paper towel, draws the WD-40 deep into this narrow channel. The solvent evaporates, leaving the sticky varnish behind. The carbon dust mixes in, creating a dark, thick paste. When the temperature drops below freezing in the deer woods, this petroleum paste literally stiffens.
Think of it like honey left in a freezer. When you pull the trigger on that monster buck, the firing pin drops, but it is moving through thick, frozen sludge. The strike is slowed down just enough to cause a light primer hit. Click. No bang. Just a hollow, sickening click. The buck's head snaps up. In a flash of white tail, he is gone forever. And you are left sitting there in the frozen dawn, staring at your rifle, wondering what the hell just happened. What happened is 12 years of WD-40 doing exactly what the laws of chemistry dictate. That is the sound of WD-40 stealing your trophy.
You do not have to take my word for it. Let me introduce you to a man who has seen the carnage firsthand. Meet Earl Hutchins. Earl is a master gunsmith with 35 years of experience, running a one-man shop out in rural Virginia. Earl is not an internet armchair expert. He is a man who has spent over 3 decades with his hands deep inside the guts of broken firearms. He has rebuilt bolt assemblies that arrived in coffee cans. He has seen what every brand of oil, every solvent, and every shortcut does to steel over time. Earl is the kind of man whose word carries weight because his fingernails are permanently stained with Hoppe's residue and carbon dust. A while back, a frustrated hunter drove 90 miles to Earl's shop with a bolt-action rifle, expecting to pay over $200 for a complex trigger repair. The customer claimed the trigger was failing. He proudly stated he took immaculate care of his rifle, hosing it down with WD-40 every September before opening day for 12 consecutive seasons. Just like his grandfather taught him, he said. Earl took the rifle to his bench and pulled the bolt apart. What he found was not a broken trigger. The entire inside of the bolt assembly, specifically the firing pin channel, was packed solid with a dark, compacted residue. It was not normal field grit. It was 12 years of polymerized WD-40 varnish, oxidized hydrocarbons cross-linked with carbon and dust into a substance harder than candle wax. The drag was so severe that the bolt could barely cycle by hand. Earl did not replace a single part. He spent 20 minutes properly cleaning out the gummy varnish, applied just 2 drops of the correct oil, and the rifle cycled like it had just left the factory floor. 12 years of WD-40 sludge, cured in 20 minutes. But think about the hunts that were ruined in the meantime. Think about the unreliable cycling, the sluggish bolt throws, the shots that were never taken because the action hesitated at the worst possible moment. Earl will tell you straight up, he has seen semi-automatic rifles actually run away, firing repeatedly like a machine gun without the trigger being pulled, because WD-40 varnish caused the firing pin to freeze in the forward position. This is not a minor inconvenience. It is a catastrophic safety hazard. But Earl is not the only one who tried to warn us. Staff Sergeant Lug Garner, retired, 20 years at Fort Campbell, left one comment on this channel that stopped me cold. He wrote, "We cleaned our M4s with nothing but CLP and a rag. Any soldier caught spraying WD-40 on his weapon would have been smoked until sunrise." Think about that. 20 years maintaining rifles that had to cycle flawlessly in sandstorms, in monsoon rain, in Afghan winter. The United States Army, the most well-funded fighting force in human history, never once reached for that blue and yellow can. They knew. The Pentagon knew. Armory sergeants knew. The knowledge existed inside every military installation on Earth. And the industry buried it. Because Sergeant Garner's $2 rag and a bottle of proper oil does not generate quarterly profits. An educated soldier is a lost customer. I sat with that comment for 3 days before I could finish writing this script, because it meant every rifle I had sprayed down in my 20s, every sluggish bolt throw I blamed on the cold, every hesitation I chalked up to cheap ammo, was my own doing. I handed my money and my reliability to a myth. I handed my confidence in the field to a campfire rumor that the industry was happy to let me believe. That is the part that burns. And if you are being honest with yourself right now, you know exactly what I am talking about. Let's pivot to something even more insidious. As hunters, we spend hundreds of dollars on scent-blocking soaps, ozone generators, and carbon-lined clothing. We play the wind obsessively. We shower in unscented soap, bag our clothes in charcoal pouches, and walk to our stands the long way around to keep our scent trail downwind. But what if your rifle is screaming your location to every deer in the county?
Researchers at the Mississippi State University Deer Lab have conducted extensive studies on the olfactory capabilities of white-tailed deer. A deer has up to 297 million olfactory receptors in its nose, compared to a human's roughly 5 million. Their sense of smell is arguably their greatest defense mechanism, capable of detecting minute chemical signatures from incredible distances. A mature buck does not just smell you. He reads the chemical composition of the air like a forensic laboratory. Remember when we broke down the chemical architecture of WD-40? It is roughly 70 to 75% volatile organic compounds. These solvents are highly aromatic and designed to evaporate, meaning they are designed to become airborne. When you spray your rifle with WD-40 before a hunt, those VOCs are constantly off-gassing into the air around you. You might not smell it after an hour, but a mature 6.5-year-old buck downwind, he smells industrial aliphatic hydrocarbons. He smells a petroleum refinery. He smells a threat that has no place in his woods. He turns around and walks the other way long before you ever see him through your optics. Think about the absurdity of it. You spend $40 on scent-killing spray for your boots. You spend another $35 on a carbon-activated storage bag for your jacket. Then you carry a rifle that is off-gassing industrial chemicals like a tailpipe. It is like putting on a ghillie suit and then strapping a flashing neon sign to your back.
Your grandfather's rifle smelled like linseed oil and wood smoke, two scents that have existed in the forest for 10,000 years. Your rifle smells like a San Diego aerospace laboratory, and the deer know the difference. You are bringing an industrial chemical factory into the pristine woods. So if WD-40 is so bad, why do so many guys still use it? And more importantly, why doesn't the gun care industry educate us better? This is the part that makes my blood boil. What the industry doesn't want you to know is that they profit immensely from the confusion. The hunting and firearm accessories market is a multi-billion-dollar juggernaut. Walk down the aisle of any big-box sporting goods store, Cabela's, Bass Pro, Academy, and you will see a massive wall of tactical gun oils, extreme weather lubricants, and high-tech friction reducers. They're packaged in aggressive camouflage bottles with military-spec fonts and names like Strike Force, Operator Elite, and Black Ops Lube. And they charge you $10, $12, sometimes $15 for a tiny 4-ounce bottle. The markup on these branded gun care products is astronomical. Earl the gunsmith calculated the numbers once, and what he found would make you sick. The active ingredients doing the actual protection work inside those expensive tactical bottles are often nearly identical to basic, widely available mineral oils that cost pennies per ounce. The difference is the label, the camo pattern shrink wrap, and the marketing budget used to sell it to you. The industry loves the fact that guys use WD-40 and ruin their guns. Why? Because a rifle that develops sticky mechanisms, rust issues, and feeding problems needs to be fixed. It needs expensive solvents. It sends hunters running back to the store every single season, desperate for a solution to a problem that should never have existed in the first place. The ideal customer for a corporate gun care brand is a hunter who believes WD-40 lubricates, because that hunter will be back every fall, credit card in hand. They do not profit from rifles that run clean and flawless decade after decade. They profit from the cycle of failure and frustration. They profit from your ignorance. And they spend millions every year making sure that ignorance stays firmly in place. Are you ready to break the cycle? Are you ready for the fix that will keep your rifle running smoother than wet glass in sub-zero temperatures without alerting the deer and without draining your wallet?
Your grandfather never needed a $12 bottle of tactical gun lube to drop a buck. He never studied a marketing brochure to figure out which oil to run. He reached for what worked, what was cheap, and what was proven. And neither do you. The secret solution has been hiding in plain sight, probably in your grandmother's sewing room. I'm talking about pure sewing machine oil. $2. Available at any fabric store, craft store, or hardware shop in America. Now, before you roll your eyes, let me walk you through the mechanical reality of why this works. Because the science is bulletproof, and once you see it, you will never look at that $12 tactical bottle the same way again. A commercial sewing machine needle drives through dense, heavy material, denim, leather, canvas, at up to 1,500 cycles a minute. The tolerances inside that complex mechanism of cams, gears, and shuttles are tighter than almost anything you will find in a standard hunting rifle. The friction is relentless. The duty cycle is punishing. The oil engineered to lubricate that system has to be spectacular. It has to stay completely fluid under repeated, sustained mechanical stress. It must maintain a perfectly consistent viscosity across a wide range of temperatures without ever gumming up or turning into sludge. Most importantly, it has to protect high-friction metal contact surfaces from extreme wear without leaving any sticky, varnish-like residue behind. Sound familiar? That is the exact performance profile your rifle bolt desperately needs. Sewing machine oil is a highly refined, low-viscosity mineral oil, typically falling in the ISO 10 to ISO 22 viscosity range. It is entirely clear, completely odorless, which the deer will appreciate, and non-staining. Because it is 100% oil and contains no volatile carrier solvents, it does not evaporate. There are no VOCs off-gassing into the deer woods. The lubricating film stays exactly where you put it for extended periods. It provides the same weight range and the same protection behavior as the expensive tactical oils, but with absolutely zero residue buildup. And the best part? $2 instead of 12. Pennies per application instead of dollars. You can walk into any fabric store in America right now and buy a bottle of high-grade sewing machine oil that will easily last you 2 full hunting seasons for the price of a cup of black coffee. Earl ran the numbers on this. A hunter running 2 rifles could spend over $60 a year on branded solvents, oils, and protectants, and that is being conservative. Switching to sewing machine oil brought that cost down to under $10 for 2 full seasons, with superior reliability, 0 gummy residue, and 0 scent signature. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a revolution sitting on a shelf next to your grandmother's thread.
Now, pay very close attention, because you cannot simply drop sewing machine oil on top of old WD-40. If you put good, clean oil on top of sticky, polymerized varnish, you are just making a bigger mess. It is like painting over mold. The rot is still underneath, and it will eat through eventually. The old petroleum film has to be completely eradicated first. Here is the exact step-by-step rehabilitation protocol used by professionals like Earl and verified by 20 years of Army armory procedure to rescue a corrupted rifle. Step 1. The purge. Make sure your rifle is completely unloaded. Remove the magazine, lock the bolt back, and visually confirm an empty chamber. Then field strip the bolt assembly according to your manufacturer's manual. Run a dry patch through the bore to clear any loose powder fouling. Now we need a degreaser. Do not reach for expensive branded gun solvents. Reach for isopropyl alcohol, specifically 91% or 99% concentration from the pharmacy. It costs about $3 a bottle. Isopropyl alcohol is a highly effective, non-polar solvent.
It will ruthlessly cut through and dissolve the hardened WD-40 grease, carbon, and sludge without leaving any film of its own behind. It evaporates almost instantaneously, within seconds, not hours. Even better, it is completely safe for your rifle's polymer frames and will not attack modern finishes like Cerakote or standard anodizing. Apply the isopropyl alcohol to a clean patch and aggressively wipe down the bolt body, the cam surfaces, and the internal channels. You will see the residue come off black and greasy. That is 12 seasons of WD-40 mythology leaving your rifle for the last time. Step 2. The light test. Hold the metal parts up under a direct, bright light source, a bare bulb or a sunny window. You are looking for a surface sheen. A perfectly clean, degreased metal surface under a bright light will look matte, not shiny. If you still see a greasy reflection,
there is still WD-40 varnish clinging to the steel. Hit it with the alcohol again until it reads completely matte and clean. Earl calls this reading the steel. When the light says matte, the steel is pure. Step 3. The micro-lubrication. Now that the metal is pure, it is time for the sewing machine oil. This is where hunters make their second biggest mistake. They drown their guns in oil. Over-lubrication is a massive error, even with the right oil, because excess fluid will eventually attract dirt and dust. More is not better. More is another path to sludge. We are going to use micro drops. Just 3 or 4 drops total for the entire bolt assembly. That is it. Place exactly 1 drop on the rear cam surface where the bolt meets the receiver. This is a high friction zone where metal grinds against metal every time you cycle the action. Place 1 drop on each of the bolt guide rails where the bolt travels in and out of the action. Finally, use a cotton swab or a pipe cleaner to apply 1 single, microscopic drop to the inside of the firing pin channel. 3 drops. Your grandfather would have approved. He knew that a light hand with good oil beats a heavy hand with bad oil every single time. Step 4. The cycle. Reassemble the bolt and place it back into the rifle. Work the bolt back and forth by hand vigorously, 15 to 20 times. This mechanical action takes those 3 tiny drops of oil and spreads them into a microscopic, perfectly even film across every bearing surface and contact point. Now, close your eyes and feel the cycle. If you have been running your gun with a WD-40 for years, you have likely become numb to the sluggish, dragging hesitation of the bolt. You just accepted that it was how your rifle felt. You thought that resistance was normal. But with the varnish gone and the sewing machine oil doing its job, the difference is shocking. The action will not feel artificially, wetly slick. It will feel smooth, precise, and quiet, like a finely tuned machine operating exactly as the engineers intended. That smooth consistency will remain regardless of whether it is 90 degrees in September or 5 degrees in January. The mineral oil stays on the surface, protecting the steel from moisture and friction without evaporating, without gumming, without off-gassing a single molecule of petroleum scent into the deer woods. Do this treatment once before the deer season starts and once after it ends. 2 incredibly cheap applications a year, and your rifle will outlast you. Remember that freezing November morning I described at the start? The 12-pointer stepping into the clearing. The click instead of the bang. That moment does not have to be yours. Your grandfather's bolt cycled clean every single time, not because he had better equipment, but because he had better information. He did not fall for the camo-patterned label. He did not believe the man behind the counter at the sporting goods store. He reached for what was simple, what was cheap, and what was proven by decades of use. Today, that information is yours.
$2, 3 drops, and a rifle that will never betray you in the cold again. But here is what keeps me up at night. Every day this video sits buried by the algorithm. Another hunter is hosing down his bolt with WD-40 the night before opening day. Another firing pin is freezing in its channel. Another season is stolen. Another son inherits the same bad advice his father was given, and the cycle repeats. So if this changed how you see that blue and yellow can, if it saved your rifle, or if it just saved you $40 a year on snake oil lubricants, I need you to do one thing. Hit subscribe. Not as a favor to me, not as social courtesy. Do it as a declaration that the old knowledge survives, that the industry does not get to bury this twice. Then send this video to one hunter in your life who still reaches for that can. Just one. That is all it takes to break the chain. The truth was free. It always has been. Your grandfather knew that. Now you do too. Stay sharp, brother. I'll see you in the woods.